Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing all right today. Um, so this is my recording for season 6 of Dexter. So in my notes, this is season 6, part 2, but this is actually the main topic of Dexter season 6. So this is actually part 1, but for some reason, oh yes, because I did my second set of notes first. That's why I did it backwards. So that's fine. But the main theme of season 6 is about adapting to changes, changes and new beginnings, things like that. I thought it was religion at first, but then no, that turns out no. Every season of Dexter revolves around two themes. Um, the main villain of each season represents a bigger. It represents basically like a second theme or message going on in Dexter. And so the villain is the reflection of the secondary theme. And the primary theme is something along the lines of that. So, as for season one, um, the message of season one was PTSD, but the secondary message and what the villain reflected was about limbo and being stuck in like a in between gray area, not sure, exactly what direction you want to be in or or not sure what direction you like to grow in, things like that. Season two, the messages were about addiction and lust. Season three was about partnerships and relationships, and the secondary theme was overindulgence. So it was gluttony, basically, just overindulgence. Season four was family uh, and greed. Yes, being greedy. I always trying to get too much of what's too trying to get too much of a good thing. And then yeah, season five was about healing and anger, and season six was about change and heresy. Heresy is about, or I'm sorry, well, yeah, but religion also. So, change and religion. I haven't actually recorded season seven yet, but I have recorded season eight. So, season seven was about love and violence, violence and love. And season eight was about um, psychopathy and being a fraud. Basically, as fraud, as in you think that you're one way, but then turns out you're not, and then you end up posing yourself as being one thing, but the deeper truth of yourself is you're really not that thing. But I didn't explain all of those in the other messages, so I'm bringing it up now. Anyway, so yeah, my 5 minute intro is over. So it is 1 o'clock in the morning. So forgive me for being a little bit tired. I think these are the best. These are the best recording sessions, in my opinion, because everything's quiet, the world is still. All right, so my 5 minute intro is up. You'll probably hear a lot of random noises trying to get my my recordings together, get my notebook. I'm gonna be skipping through these DVDs episodes as I'm giving the notes to. So yeah, may hear some. All right, so episode. Gosh, I wrote like a whole more than half of a page for episode one. I think I only did the first 7 episodes, which ends in Nebraska. The tone of season six changed way too much after episode seven, and it leaves me with a really bad, not so good feeling. So I don't really like to go past that episode seven. Well, all right, let's see. This was really really hard for me to do these notes, so please bear with me. So for my first note, despite our best efforts, things go wrong when change forces itself in. And yeah, the only constant in the world, the only constant in the universe, the only constant in life is change. So even though we want things to be the same, no matter what we do to try and keep it the same, things just go wrong when change has to happen, when, someone has to grow up, when we have to move on to a new job, and someone else has to move on, and, it's life when it just evolves. So sometimes in life, that's just how change works. Um, okay, so this is a bit of an Easter egg. Uh, these two paramedics, their names are Ben and Roger. And as these two characters are trying to explain why they did what they did, Dexter yells at them and he's just like, no, you know, that was actually, that was an Easter egg. And I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. It was a small detail that the act that was added into the character in that scene because, it was more, oh yes, it was because Dexter throughout his journey was always trying to find excuses, as to why he would do certain things or trying to play judge and jury and executioner and all that. And as they start to try to explain why they did what they did and try to, explain or whatever, like Dexter was like, "No, I'm tired of," after what happened with Lumen and everything, Dexter had that mental block there, and he was like, "Nah, I'm not finna, give you guys a chance." And it was like a mental block there from left over from what happened between him and Lumen. But anyway, to move on from that, yeah. So this next scene, what do you want Harrison to believe? Um, despite what we think we know about the world, when we become a mentor, we have to pass down knowledge to someone else. Um, we have to think about what we want them to believe in, what we want them to benefit in. They may benefit more in a subject, whereas we didn't, so or we tried to get involved in something, but we've seen other people benefit, maybe, if it's good, if it's positive. But sometimes if we see other people say, "Oh, it worked out for me," then we try it out and it doesn't work out for us. Sometimes when we have a child or when we're taking care of somebody or we're a mentor, we have to think about what do we really want them to believe in. And at the end of the day, it's human nature to believe in something. So it is important to keep that in mind that when you are the mentor of somebody, or someone's looking up to you, it's important to give them some sense of direction of what to believe in. And as much as, things start to change and evolve, it's important to keep that, to be aware of that. It's important to be aware of what you want to pass on versus what you don't. You have to be aware of that as well, because especially when when you're a mentor and you're passing something down, your teacher passes something down to your student, you have to be mindful and aware of, what do you want to pass on. Like there was this episode of this TV show that came out in the 70s, late 70s. It was called Good Times. I believe it was Good Times. And there was an episode where the mother was talking to the father, and she was like, "We spent our whole lives trying to give our kids the life that we never had, and we forgot to give them the life that we did have." And so, that quote spoke layers because, as much as you want to, provide something for your children or something that's like, "Oh, I want to give you the best or give you what I didn't have." It's also important to keep in mind the good memories and the good things that you've had and how you would love your children to experience those good experiences that you've had growing up. So be mindful of what you would love to have them experience as well as what you would have them not experience. But it is important to have a balance of the two. The next one is getting promoted. Okay, so this scene, this is when LaGuerta got promoted, and Captain Matthews, Captain Matthews says, "Congratulations, Maria, you're promoted. You're playing with the big dogs now. You're in the big leagues." So when change hits us and we get into a new situation, a new atmosphere, or trying to think of wildlife, terrain, something along those words. Um, I want to say it's not atmosphere, but ecosystem. I don't know. But once we get into like that new, area, um, especially when we get promoted into like a bigger, like a bigger field, a new field, you start playing with heavy hitters. You know that when you evolve into new fields, the games and the rules of the game start changing. And then you have to learn how to adapt to new rules once you get into new positions and things like that. So, once you do evolve into a new opportunity, don't always think that, oh, it could still just be all right. It's like, no, the rules change. Every situation has a set of rules. And it's important to know how they are because it's important to be aware of how the rules are. Because even if you want to reinvent the wheel, you have to know how to do it. And to know how to do it, you have to know how the rules work and then you play around those rules. So it's important to know that. All right, Masuka, the next note. So Masuka, when you're in a leader, take control. All right, so this note, Masuka takes on some interns, and so when you are the leader, a lot of people are gonna wonder, why am I here? What am I doing? What's important? It doesn't matter if they're children or adults. When there's a bunch of people huddled up and they're in an unfamiliar space, they're not really gonna know what's going on or what's happening. Their mind is trying to process familiarities. Sometimes some people may be aggressive. Sometimes there'll be some people who may be forceful or joking, or they may challenge you, and it's because they are in an unfamiliar area. And so atmosphere, they're in an unfamiliar space. So when you are a leader and you are leading a group of people, it is important that you know how to find how to hook in your audience. Once you hook them in and you take on the leadership role, you remind them of why they're here. You remind them of what they're there for and why they need to listen to you. It's important to always overwhelm them, overwhelm their senses, overwhelm their mind, overwhelm not so much to the point that they like shut down, but overwhelm them enough to the point where they will automatically follow you and not give it like a second thought because their brain is still trying to figure out what's going on. Then you hit them with something new and their brain is still trying to process that. Then you hit them with something new. You just got to keep on going. When you're a leader, just keep moving forward, and eventually they'll keep up, they'll catch up. But when you are leading people, you have to be dominant and you have to be, in a sense, overwhelming, such as Masuka was with his interns. So there was an Easter egg. Next note, there's an Easter egg here. Yes, okay, this Easter egg. When you watch Dexter Original Sin, there is a the actor who played Dexter was skinny. So when Dexter's at his reunion, one of the people says, "Hey, Dexter, someone's been working out." And he hits Dexter, and Dexter's like, "Yeah, well, in Dexter Original Sin, the prequel, he was a skinny a skinny kid, a skinny character. So that was a nice thing that they remembered, that back in the day Dexter was a skinny little boy back in high school, skinny little guy in high school. Um, yes, which is interesting. So when did he start learning how to fight? Never mind. But yeah, all right. Next note. Oh, I wish I remembered this scene. So this note is your outlook on life changes what you remember. Oh yes, I do remember this scene. This is when Dexter's at his reunion, and everyone's like, "Oh hey Dex," and Dexter's like, "What the heck? I thought I was the loser." So this actually happened to me once. I'll give you a quick example. I thought I was a loser. I thought I was a loser in high school. And then one day, and then was at the movie theaters, dollar movie, and I saw someone from high school, and he was like, "Yo, love," he was so excited to see me, and I was like, "Hey, what's up?" So he was talking to me about high school, and he was talking about me, and how everyone was about me, and how I was the cool guy, and how I fit in with like every group, and how I was connected to everybody, and I was like, oh, this whole time I thought I was the loser and I didn't fit in with anybody. Turns out I actually fit in with everybody. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that. So, the guy was just talking to me about how how amazing things were at school, and he shared with me all these memories, and I was like, wow, I didn't remember any of this. But yeah, when your outlook in life changes, then you remember how you remember things change. You could remember having an abusive person in your life, an abusive parent or sibling or cousin or something, and you can just remember them being so mean and cruel to you. But then as you get older and you start having more healthy boundaries within yourself, and you start just thinking about the past, you start thinking, huh, when that person was abusive to me, they were actually this way, they're actually that way. So this whole time I grew up, feeling a certain way, and the whole time I just didn't have, a healthy eyes to see situations in a healthy way. The whole time they were probably just giving you tough love, or, trying to toughen you up, or they themselves were not broken. So they treated you as if you weren't a broken person, but deep down inside you were, and they didn't know that. So they were constantly just hitting you with more and more trauma, and they didn't know that they were traumatizing you because they don't know what trauma is. They have healthy boundaries, and they've, you know what I mean? So, sometimes as our outlook changes, we remember things differently, we remember people differently, and we remember the emotions of situations differently. And it is a form of quantum leaping, time, and a sense of time travel, as in time is different from in our memories. Just how we can think of things, think of the past, and we can think of them, we can think of things as looking different or seeming different, or words being said differently, things like that. And it's like, yeah, memories hold, frequencies and ideas of the past, concepts of the past, but at the same time, we can actually alter our own past and change it, with our present boundaries. And I am getting off a little topic with this, um, but since I'm on the topic, I'll be quick. So, with our current present day boundaries, we can create boundaries, and we can take those new boundaries and look into the past. And once we look into the past with the growth that we have in the present, then the past can be influenced by who we are today. And when that happens, that can actually change how our future evolves. Simply because the present is always first. It is not the past. So the future will always copy the past. there's always going to be a repeated cycle. So, if you, what do they call it? History always repeats itself. There we go. So when things happen in the past, they will again happen in the future if a lesson is not learned, or something hasn't been made peace with. So if you do work on your boundaries now and look into your past, you can actually prepare to make a more healthier future for yourself, and you won't be repeating the same negative patterns of the past. So yeah, I did want to talk about that because when you do change in life, when you do change your current self, then your past will change, and then how you live out the rest of your future will change. And I bring all that up because Dexter's at his reunion right now. I'm watching that scene, and so that's what I got when I watching that. The next note. Let me make sure I'm still recording. Yeah. Wow, already 20 minutes in, huh? Next note. Uh, Change can be annoying, but it can also prepare you for opportunities. Um, yeah, you could want things to be the same, keep things the same, but then change will force itself into your life, and you're like, oh man, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with this person. An annoying person may come to you at your job, at your work, or something, or in person or something. They may just bother you, and you're just like, oh man, why is this person bothering me? That person who may be bothering your, messing with your peace, coming into your life and upsetting you, they may actually be there because you may have a bigger, you may have a choice that may come to you sometime soon. And this person is just here as like a preparation to prepare you for, they may be like a foreshadowing, or they may be here to prepare you for an upcoming opportunity that you may need to be prepared for. And if that knowing person never came to you and did what they did or said what they said to you, then you would not have gotten whatever you needed in that moment, the key that you needed in that moment to unlock uh, the the more beneficial pathway of the opportunity that may come your way soon. So yeah, just be mindful of that. Change can be annoying, but it can also prepare you for bigger opportunities. That's yeah, that usually happens a lot. Sometimes unexpected things will happen, like with our bank account or something. We're just like, why did this thing happen? What did this thing happen? It's like it's because a bigger situation is going to come, and these were just like little foreshadowings to prepare you for it, so that way you'll know what to do once the big test comes. Life does that to us. Next note. This is when Quinn is trying to propose to Deb. Um, I believe Quinn is a representation of Dexter's expression, I want to say. And Deb represents his humanity. So, with that, Dexter's human side is not ready to fully commit to his form of self expression. Because, yeah, he's not ready for that. Um, anyway, sorry. Mine kind of drifted off for a second. Anyway, that's what you're here for, the authentic recordings. Yeah, when people start acting weird, it's because they're focused on something. Sometimes someone may want to get a new job, or they want to do something new in life. They're working on a big story, they're working on a book, they're working on a new movie project or a new soundtrack, something along those lines. Maybe you're in religion or something. They're trying to get involved into it. And sometimes when they're acting weird, they just need their space to really get into character of they just need their space to really get into the energy, you know what I mean, of what it is they're focused on and what it is they're trying to grow into. So when people act weird, don't always attack them and be like, "You're acting weird. You need to stop it." Blah. It's like, no, sometimes people just need their space, to kind of grow, but they don't want to be like, "Give me space," and that because then that just creates another layer of an issue and adds to a more already complicated equation. Sometimes people are trying to grow in healthy ways, and by telling people, "Give me space," that opens up the door to confusion and therefore opens up the door to more complex, uh, equations or, pieces to an equation. And that just, it can mess with people's self development. So sometimes when people are, acting weird. Sometimes it's just because they're focused on something. So just keep that in mind, and just keep those healthy boundaries with people. Next note. Uh, like I can't even read my own handwriting. I want to say tactics. It's old. Yeah. Okay. So sometimes old tactics need to be adapted to. Oh, okay, so sometimes old tactics need to be adapted to new games. Um, yes, and this was the scene when Dexter was playing football with our boy with I want to say Travis, but I know his name's not Travis. That's the name of the villain. Whatever. But yeah, that dude, the football dude, the jock. Um, so the old tactics sometimes need to be adapted to new games. So when Dexter was trying to get his blood sample, Dexter would try every time and he would fail and he would fail. He was like, "Darn it." So Dexter kept trying to, play this game and try to get this dude and it just wasn't working. So then Dexter had to use an old tactic and just good old elbow to the face, the old ways, just boom, sometimes trying to sometimes trying to adapt into a new game, yeah, so sometimes when there's a new game being played, sometimes old tactics are what's needed for moments, for a situation. Sometimes it's what's needed. Um, yeah, when you're adapting to a new game, sometimes old tactics help the new rules play out more. You know what I mean? Anyway, next note. Those kinds of things. Oof. Um, hold on one second. Yeah. Oops. All right. Yeah. Make sure I had the right page because some of these are religious notes that I wrote. I don't know. I must have gotten them mixed up or something. Anyway, so next note. Those kinds of things. Just because your child or someone that you're raising may want to think of those kinds of things. They may want to think of they may want to be they may think of the universe or things that are more, the things that are beyond what they see in front of their face. They may want to think about, other things, other religions, other things. So, you got to be careful about when it comes to those kinds of things just because it's something you believe in or don't believe in, you may deny your children from being able to explore something that they would love to explore because you did something because of your own selfish reasons. You could deny them an entire lifetime of wanting to commit to something. Like they may want to convert to a religion when they get older, but you forcefully gave them a tattoo when they were a baby or a kid. You forcefully gave them a body piercing, and this person may be against piercings and they themselves had it forced on them. Same as circumcision when you do that to a kid or something. Like you're completely altering. It's a lifetime altering thing. So just be careful when you do stuff like that. You have to consider that your kids may want to be involved in things that maybe you're not involved in, and it's not good to just mold them or permanently inflict something upon them that they may not want to be a part of, or it's not right to deny them something that you know what I mean. So if there's something that they want to do to their body, if there's something they want to do to themselves, let them choose to do it. Let them choose to be converted into a religion. Teach them the importance of it, but don't be like, I'm going to grow, you're going to grow up and know all this religious stuff, things like that. Teach them the values of it first. And then if they say, I would love to convert into it, then that's going to be a more powerful conversion. You know what I mean? So just keep that in mind, those kinds of things. Um, don't deny your children from exploring. Don't mold them, don't force them into a certain path. Um, the next note I wrote was desire in everyone. God put his a desire in everyone. I don't know why I wrote that. We're all just surrogates. We're all just playing out, some form of God's will. So yeah, when God put a desire in everyone, we all have that light inside of us, some kind of guidance inside of us, some kind of star. They call it the North Star. Everyone has it, the North Star, which is when you're born, you know what you're born with in your heart. But once you develop the ability to listen to your heart, then your North Star will resonate with you, and then your path in life will be clear. Usually, we grow into our path, but we're not 100% sure how to get on that path. But once we learn how to be honest, how to be truthful, how to really listen to our inner selves, how to resonate with, the truth of what's inside of us, um, then the North Star will present itself to us. And once it does, there may be a lot of contradictions in what we know. We may have to change. We may have to adapt. We may need to evolve new into new beings, into new ways of thinking, new ways of feeling, just to fully embody, who it is we know we came here to be on this earth. Um, the next line I wrote was moral goodness. Yeah, we all have a sense of goodness and bad. Like you could look at justice. Okay, this is a perfect example. If a lot of people have this weird thing where they're like, um, someone called someone a name or so. I don't know. That's a bad example. It's okay. So when I say moral goodness, it's more like, yeah, we all have some kind of I don't want to say programming, but like a pre-direction in our DNA, like something that we think is right or wrong. It's like I don't I see I don't well, okay, I guess I could use that as an example. One of the first things that came to mind. Um like in society when we have a justice system, sense of moral goodness would be like oh, there's an adult and they're like 30 years old and they are in a relationship with like a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old. And so a lot of people have this thing in their brain that's just like, that's not right. And it's like, okay, stop for a second, sit down and explain why. And it's just like, it's just not right. So right there, you can't really explain what that is, but we all have it to where or most of us have it, to where we just know, okay, that's not right. When we sit here and see someone get murdered or something, we just know, oh, that's not right. it's like we all have that somewhere in our mind, and oops, sorry, it's a bit loud. We all have that somewhere inside of us, and so in this scene where Batista is talking to Dexter about it, um, we all have that sense. Yeah, um, yeah, weird examples, but it had to. Anyway, so yeah, and then the last note I wrote was the feeling. Yeah, something that you feel, not explain. So, okay, I guess that's why I have a hard time with it. It's something that you can only feel, or that you feel. It's hard to explain. That's what I'm doing right now. All right, finally, the next line. Making plans. Oh yes, this is when Batista gets a promotion. So a lot of times when we get a new promotion or we get put into a new position, and we say, you know what, let's celebrate. And so sometimes we'll make these plans and we'll try to celebrate for like a new thing that we may be getting. Sometimes we count the eggs before they hatch. Um, and yeah, so I feel like I have to go back to my last note real quick. When it comes to the whole uh, moral goodness and all that, those that wasn't I brought that up because I wanted to talk about how what in this scene what Batista was talking about when he was saying there's a sense of moral goodness in everybody. And as I'm going through these episodes, I thought maybe that would be some. I wrote this episode is titled "Those Kinds of Things." So when I wrote subplots of you know, God put a desire in everyone and moral goodness and feeling that you can't explain. Those were all branches of those kinds of things. So, a reason why I brought up the whole moral goodness and I brought up such extreme um, examples was basically because I had to kind of get into that space where it was like, kind of triggering, but also like if I said something that was a bit more lighter, then people would have so many different excuses, mental excuses for it. So I was like, you know what, let me just, what can I say that's like a bunch of people can agree on, no matter what belief system or religion or group or philosophy they have with something. And I was just thinking and a bunch of different things, and I thought, okay, maybe I could use those just as an example. That's what that was about. Anyway, yeah. So when you get into a new position, you may want to celebrate. Nothing wrong with that. You can do it. Just be careful. Don't overspend. Don't spend $300 because I got a new, I got a new job. Okay, so I can actually give you a real life example with this. Making plans when offered a new position. I'm actually watching the scene right now where Dexter's talking to the nun. Yeah. So with this message, you want to, whenever there's something important or a change that you want to happen, you may not understand why you want it, but you may instinctively do things out of character to allow this thing to happen. You may not entirely know why, but you may want to do it. Or you may change, make decisions that are like, I really want this to happen. And you just do it without really thinking. It's instinctive. But yeah, so okay, so making plans when offered a new position. A couple years ago, 2022 ish, I made a decision. I was getting a job, and I was going to be making about $23 an hour, something like that. So I was like, okay, making $23 an hour. Had my interview. The interview guy said, "We'll let you know when your first day is." Um, So silly me, I thought that meant I got the job. So I put my 2 week notice in at my other job and everything. 2 weeks were almost up. Bad things happened. I had two uncles, two family members, two relatives that got hit by a semi truck, an 18-wheeler, while they were on their moped scooter, their electric scooter. So they were badly hospitalized and needed surgeries. That same time, my I had a best friend who ended up committing suicide over with me over the phone with me. And then at that same week, that my uncles and my best friend, um, my grandmother passed away. My grandma passed away, and I was like, oh man. Well, when my grandma died, I called into work, and um, I came back in the next day, and they were like, "Oh, you called in. You know, my grandma died. They were like, you called in to work while you're on your 2 week notice, so legally we can fire you. So you're no longer allowed to work here." And I tried to explain to them what happened. It was an emergency, and they were just like, "Yeah, we don't care. We already took you out of the system." So, which was a lie because I was still able to clock in and out. But I was there for a bit working already. So, uh, but the reason why I bring all that up is because when that happened, they fired me, and I was like, oh man. So I called the job that I was working at, that I was getting gonna get $23 an hour with, and I called them up and got a hold of them, and I'm like, yo, what's up? Uh, when's my first day? You guys haven't. He's like, oh, you have a backed up email that got clogged in our system. I was like, okay. So she sent it to me, and it was a rejection letter. And so I never got the job, and I lost my last job, and I was grieving and I was sad, and I was like, oh man. Well, around that same time, I got a new vehicle because I thought I was getting a new job. So I prematurely got a new vehicle, and I went from making $130 payments to 720, a little over 720. So that happened. My insurance went up from like 100 to like two something, 200, yeah. So now I went from no job, from a job to no job, and my expenses shot way up. So now I'm stuck with this. So my original plan was, now that I have a $23 an hour job, I can work here, get my money up, pay this vehicle off, and pay the vehicle not off, but pay it for about 2 years, a year or so, get my credit up. Once my credit was up, I'll pay a little bit of extra money to get my credit up. Maybe $50 extra or something every month, and just focus on getting my credit up with this vehicle. And so once that happened, my credit would be up, and then I could afford a decent place to live. I just had to, endure this job. If I hated this job, suck it up for 2 years. No matter what the problem was, if I had to lie, I would lie to keep that job. I would follow the rules. I was going to keep that job for 2 years. So I had a whole plan to really get my future together. And because all this stuff happened at one time, I fell behind. And I've been behind in my life for about over maybe like 3, 4 years now, and I've never been able to get myself back out of the situation. Currently, as I'm recording this, I'm actually still in this situation, and it's hard for me to move on, because it's hard for me to save up money and make proper investments and maintain these, the bills, the expenses. So, when you are going through changes or a promotion, it is very important that you do not do things or make decisions prematurely before you have secured so you have secured your new position or your new job. Anyway, I had to share that because I do not want anyone in life to fall under the path that I fell. because it's rough. It is rough. you know, Moving on before I get too emotional. Angel was talking to Jamie at the dinner table. Yeah. So as as Batista was talking to Jamie at the dinner table, he was saying, "Oh, Audi, his daughter, something about his daughter wanted to do something on her own." He was like, "Oh, I'm sure it's just a phase." She was like, "Yeah, I'm sure." He was in denial because his daughter is growing up. Our children do grow up, and you have to let them do it. Please let them do it. Don't be stuck in a position where you don't want your child to grow up and you do these little things to sabotage their ability to move out or their ability to grow, their ability to get their education. Don't guilt trip them into saying, no, you can't go to college. No, you can't go to school. No, you can't graduate. No, you can't get a job. Don't do stuff like that. It's going to hurt them in the future. And yes, I am. Anyway, so yeah. So when it comes to adapting to changes like that, like children growing up or something like that, it's important to let them grow up. So yeah, please let them. Um, Learn to support them. Learn to be there for them. Learn to prepare them for their future. Do not prepare them for your past. Understand that. Um, when it comes to these family curses and breaking these cycles, these generational curses, these family curses that get passed down. A lot of times it's us that passes it down to our children. So we have to be mindful about what we're doing for them, doing to them. Also in the conversation, Batista was also evolving, growing more into his parent, and she was like, "Oh, you're not like Pop, you are Pop." Yeah, that's a big fear that many of us have is as we get older, we're probably going to grow up to be like our parents, and we're like, I can't stand my parent, I can't stand them. And as we grow older, sometimes we slip into their behaviors. There are times when I was very emotional, and my mother was not, and my parent was not. And so there were times when she would give me cold answers. And every time I would try to say, "Hey, I have a problem, I have an issue," she would constantly hammer me with, "It's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. You're choosing to have this problem. It's your." And I was like growing up, and I'm like, I'm asking for help. And then after a while growing up, I start getting to a point where I'm just like, maybe it is my fault that I've been going through all this. And I'm starting to get older, and I just feel like I've never been seen or heard of or you know whatever acknowledged. So I'm starting to like slowly understand or mold into what it was my parent, what she was trying to tell me growing. It's like a part of me is saying that's not right. There's something not right. And another side of me is like, well, maybe she was right the whole time. So I struggle with that. But so yeah, that can be a very difficult change to go through. Is the evolution of evolving into parents, and if you know that they're not good for you, if you know you didn't feel good inside for what they said to you, then that's how you know to get away from it. You don't have to mold yourself into that voice, into the echoes of the voices that your parents tell you are. You know what I mean? And sometimes when we do grow up and have their behaviors, we have the ability to alter how we express those behaviors that they have for us. Sometimes we can't help but to grow into their personality, into what they were like, but how we express, how they express themselves had a source, and the source was probably negative for us. but we can still take on their personality at the source and we can express it in a more positive way. Instead of talking down to people, we can maybe be motivational to people. You know what I mean? It's like it's that contrast. So just know that if you feel like you are growing into your parent, if you are growing into them, you can express those traits, characteristics in more healthy ways. All right. Anyway, next note. Um. Oh yeah, Dexter talks to the nun. I talked about that. We do things instinctively when there's a new change that we want, but we're not entirely sure why we want it. It also goes into love too. Hmm. Next note: people can change. Yes, people can change and do. People can change and do what you least expect. Yes, this is when Masuka, when Vince was when he chose his intern who had the best scores. A lot of times we may be used to a person's behavior and used to the way a person thinks or acts or does whatever. Um, but uh, we'd be surprised that when it comes down to it, when it comes down to the importance of you know of a situation, then you'd be surprised that just because someone's goofy, when it comes down to a serious situation, they can make a mature decision. Just because we're not used to seeing them that way, just because they're not used to acting that way all the time, doesn't mean you can't make a good, healthy, mature decision. Um, so yeah, I just saw the scene where Deb is with. Sorry, Travis and Geller are talking. And it's like a beautiful sunset scene. I just want to acknowledge that sunset for a second. But anyway, this exterior shot in at the daycare, it looks like it's actually in California. Yeah, I think that's a California exterior. But I just got to the scene where Deb had the shootout with that guy who had the body armor, and then she shot at the guy, and he was trying to shoot at the place. Yeah, if you lose your job, don't something. This character lost his job, and after he lost his job, he got mad and got body armor and shot up the place. And I did not write that in my notes on purpose because I didn't want to talk about a subject like that. But sometimes when we lose our job or we're fired or change is forced upon us on such a level, when we get scared and we don't know what to do, violence isn't the answer. We can't just, oh, I'm mad, let me hurt all these people. Like, no. Sometimes when we get fired or we lose our job, it's because there's something better for us there. When we're comfortable and we're somewhere where we don't belong, we're not gonna leave. So sometimes life puts us in an uncomfortable situation where it forces us to leave because we have to learn how to grow. It's important to have that filter or those boundaries of when something happens to me it's happening for me, not to me. You know what I mean? It's happening to you, for the benefit of how you're going to grow. Um, but you just have to keep that in mind and keep that healthy, boundary in mind. So yeah, when you lose the job, just you know, well, wow, I'm 54 minutes in. I'm still on the first episode. Yeah, first episode this month. So next note is People can change. Yeah, well, yeah. If it's important enough, people can do things unrecognizable, even if it seems out of character. Uh, you may be content with your way of life, but your offspring, your students, may want to think of those kinds of things. So yeah, keep that in mind. All right, done with episode one. Now on to episode two. All right, well, episode one and two have majority of the lessons. So, um, yeah. All right. Am I still recording? Yes, still recording. Episode two. Don't know the name of this episode, but Daddy's box. Yeah. So a lot of times when we do have kids, sometimes we feel a little bit un. Okay, so I've seen this when parents or whatever will be sometimes naked around their kid or something like that. They're like, "Oh, they're too young to remember." It's like at some point they're gonna look at you and be like, "What the heck?" And then when you're gonna be like, "Wait a minute, do they actually know I'm naked?" You know. Of course, I say that through experience, but um, at some point we do these random things. We drink. My dad would drink. Or sometimes there would be drugs involved, and sometimes there would be certain sexual things involved. And at some point, especially when you're raising somebody, they're gonna look at you and they're gonna be like, "What are you doing?" It's not gonna be like, "Oh, we're just gonna drink around the kids. Oh, we're just gonna twerk around the kids. We're just gonna do this and this around all the kids, do drugs." And it's at some point they're gonna actually start to notice, like, "What are you doing?" And then that's when it's like, "Oh, snap." That is a change to prepare for. That I wrote that. So anyway, that is the definition of Daddy's box. Sometimes you want to share everything with your kids. You want to just be like, "Oh, I have a kid. They won't judge me for saying something. I could just say whatever I want to, and as say the most messed up thing to them. They don't understand. They won't understand what I'm saying, so they won't judge me for it. And at some point, it gets into their mind. They start commenting, and it's like, oh snap, they're getting to that age now where they understand what I'm saying. Yeah, that's a change that you have to prepare for. Keep in mind that they are going to grow up eventually, and you just got to be careful about when that moment is that they start realizing certain stuff, and just be mindful of that. Um, Next note. Um, let's see, changes, wanting to propose, or next step. I don't know what that is at all, so I have to skip that one. I think what that means is wanting to propose or next step reflects good I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. So next step. So Deb. So after Quinn proposes to Deb. Dexter's like, well, he doesn't give you trauma. What does he offer? And Deb's like, well, he doesn't give me trauma like the rest of my relationships. And he's like, okay, there you go. She's like, I'm not sure if I want anything more than no trauma right now. Because, being in a relationship and you have all these stuff happen, and then you are in a relationship and it's just good, and it's like, okay, it's perfect, it's good, it's balanced, it's fine, But then once you go into that next step, you start becoming more into stepping more into your power, more into who you're capable of becoming. And sometimes in a relationship, the relationship that you're in, meaning, you know, no trauma, that's just a relationship that's keeping you where you're at right now, balanced and still and just happy. But then when you need to evolve and you need to change and go into that next step, sometimes that relationship that you're in was never meant to help you grow into your next power. And you knew that. It was just a relationship that you needed to settle in just to feel good at the moment, or just to settle into while you healed yourself. And then once you see that your partner is starting wanting to move on to that next level, it's like, oh snap, no, I didn't want to grow past this. I just wanted to chill in this energy for a while until, you know, some part of me was ready to move on to that next step. That is, don't you don't have to feel guilty about that. Just try and understand um, what those emotions are. Moving on to okay, I know what I was going to say now in that previous note. So the changes, wanting to propose or go to the next step, it reflects good emotions. What that means is a lot of times when you want to move forward or move into or evolve into the next step with a person in your relationship or whatever. Um, yeah, and here's the scene right here. It just popped up on my screen. So yeah, I just remembered. This is when Quinn was cooking breakfast for Deb. So in this scene, when you want to do something good, when you want to move on with somebody, when you want to propose to them, when you want to, oh, let's get a new house together, let's get a new car together, let's do something big and new together. Once you get to that point where you want to move forward into something bigger with somebody, the good emotions, the good feelings, the best parts of what the relationship was, of what you felt for that person, you're going to feel all of them. You feel all of them. You're also going to feel some of the bad ones, but you're going to be reminded of, is this important? How important is this? How good is this? How good does it make us feel? How good does it make them feel? Does it make me feel? It makes us happy? You're gonna really be flooded with all these good feelings and emotions. You're gonna be on cloud nine with how this person makes you feel, how the situation makes you feel, how this job makes you feel. Now, sometimes you will feel the peak happiness and joy of a situation or of a person or a job simply because you need to be reminded this is the happiest that you are ever going to feel in this situation. Are you absolutely sure that this is what you want for the rest of your life? So sometimes when you feel that peak happiness, it's, yeah, I want to stay in here forever. Sometimes that peak of happiness is trying to remind you that you are at a fraction of how happy you can be. And it is important to realize that. So, yeah, that's what that note was. Skipping ahead now, two notes. Uh, this was the scene when Deb walked into the room and everyone clapped. Yeah, when you do when you do heroic things, when you are a heroic person, people will see you as a hero. Basically, when you do something, you know, big and positive, whether it is your job or you're just doing something that's in your character, once someone like witnesses you doing it, some people may treat you different. They'd be like, "Oh, hey, it's Superman. Hey, it's Wonder Woman. Hey, it's our heroes." And you may go viral because you did something good. when really you were just doing something in your character. And once you really do something in your character, and escalate into it, you evolve, you become, bigger. Some people may love that. People may appreciate that, worship that. Skipping to the next note. Okay, I already said that. You got fired from. Oh, so I did write that note. Okay. Um, I believe this was. I'm gonna skip that note from for now. Just because you change, your past may still come up to haunt you. Yes. Um, you may be from a past of bad things, drugs, gangs, things not even that serious, not even that deep. But if you did something in school or something, sex work, or worker that you may be doing currently, or you did a few months ago, a few years ago, something like that. You know, um, you may do something and then completely change, evolve into the opposite direction. But as soon as you do that, you become a better person, you evolve, and you moved on from the past. But you still have other people who are like, you know what? No, we're gonna continue to let your past live on, and they're gonna constantly bring it up. That always happens in Hollywood, and someone did something 20, 30 years ago, and it's like time to cancel this person. What did they say 30 years ago? Bring it up now. Get them fired from their job. Get them out of this movie. It's like really. But yeah, that was the scene with Brother Sam and Batista, which is just because you change your past, people, it still may come up. So understand that when you do change, when you do evolve, there are still going to be some people who may try to remind you of your past and everything. So just take it with just do your best to handle that in a healthy way. Just expect that it may be a thing that comes up. Move on from it as best you can. I don't want to give any names because I know some people who have changed, and if I bring up their names, it's not just about saying, hey, they've evolved into something more. It's also a gateway, is saying, oh, let me look up this person's name, and now there's a new investment for who they've moved on from. And but just know that it is possible to change and to move on. Just so I'm not going to give any examples for anybody in the world that I know, or any celebrities that I know, and things I know that people have done in the past. And all right. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, from con to minister. Brother Sam's change. Yeah. You can be from a dark and move on into. Yeah. So that was basically Brother Sam's change. Was you can have a dark past and you can move on to something better, or holy or righteous, or better, good, some way. Less healthy, less destructive, less life threatening. All right, moving on to the next notes. Momentum of change, Deb's promotion. A lot of times when one thing or two things, normally when two things change, but usually, normally when one thing changes, it starts creating a momentum for an uncontrollable cluster of change to come into our life and evolve. So just keep that in mind that when there's a big change in our life, it's an opportunity to grow in so many other ways. And sometimes many changes will force themselves onto us. Like I knew someone who was, you know, they're like, oh, I'm in an abusive situation with my boss. Time to get out of here. Then they left, got a new job. And once they got a new job, they were hired as the manager right away, but then they ended up getting into a new relationship, as they got that new relationship, they ended up getting an approval for a new apartment. And they're just like, what? And they're just like, yeah. And now they just have to get the money to get it, but they have the opportunity. Then on top of that, the store manager ends up leaving and saying, hey, I know you just started here, but like, do you want to be the head manager of the store? Because out of all the managers here, you're the newest one, but you also are like the most qualified because you actually take it seriously. And it's like, what? So I knew someone whose life evolved and changed. It's, so yeah, when something big changes in our life, expect many other changes to happen to kind of fit the momentum of who we're becoming and how our life is changing, and that is seen in Deb's character. Next note, oof, yeah, unexpected changes. Changes can be very unexpected, and it can be very hard to cope with it. Deb is having a very, very hard time coping with all of these changes, and there's so much she has to do. People treat her different, and she has to talk to Batista about it, and she's like, oh man, Batista was up for the promotion, and he's my best friend, but then I was offered. And if they're your friends and they'll be there to support you. If you're someone's friend, you will be there to support them. It's people aren't always out to get you or hurt you. Sometimes it's just their path to move forward. Even though you feel you deserve that spot, it's their path. Even though you worked hard for it and it's something you want, sometimes it's just other forces involved. But also sometimes it's just politics and people saying, sometimes you're just a piece in a game and you don't know it. And, you're just like trying to play by the rules, trying to do the right thing. And, you're in a game that's bigger than even you. And you're just not, you're too righteous. You're not equipped to be that terrible person that it takes to be in that position that you want. Sometimes that position is going to change you in such a way that you're going to lose a piece of yourself. Sometimes it's not meant for you. You know what I mean? All right. Next note. Yeah, sometimes opportunities may hurt friends. Next note. So Deb is comparing herself now. I'm actually on this scene and this note at the same time, which is funny. Deb is comparing herself to her dad and to LaGuerta. She's like, yo, I've always compared myself to this person. But, it's just like in Thor Ragnarok. Sorry, spoilers, I guess. When, I want to say spoilers, you can skip 30 seconds. I'll say 20 to 30 seconds. All right. As soon as I start talking. Just like that scene in Thor Ragnarok when Thor told Odin, he's like, I'm not as strong as you. And Odin was like, you're right, you're stronger. And then, Thor found his power. He was like, "Brah, lightning blast, lightning." Anyway, so a lot of times we will compare ourselves to other people and we'll be like, yo, I started this career, I started this path because of you. You motivated me, you were my hero, and you helped me get there. It's like, yep, but then understand that you are like technically like the next generation to that energy, that essence, which means you can actually evolve or become more than what your mentor was. You can evolve, you know, what they were, what their limitations were. You got there, but now you can apply what you have within yourself to how you've gotten there, and now you can surpass what they've become. That's the way evolution works. evolution doesn't just work in biology; it's psychological, and comparing ourselves to other people, that's just know that there's a healthier way of doing so. Uh, you know, I strive to be like the writers for Shameless or even Dexter. But you never know. Maybe I could someday write better, or just as good or better. But if I'm constantly comparing myself to them, maybe I'm selling myself short on what I can do or what I can be capable of doing. Same as you guys. Next note. Uh, yep, I already said this. As much as you want something, it's important to be supportive to others. All right, next note. People can grow apart by wanting different paths in life. Um, with Deborah and Quinn, they're just growing in two different directions, and sometimes in life that happens. Sometimes that's how changes work. Is we grow in different directions, even though we love somebody. We grow in different directions from the people that we love. And it's not that we don't love them, it's just that we're growing into new people, into new beings, and there's just no, there's no room for them to remain in that position that they were for us at the time. But as we are moving on, the love is still there. They could still be there for us. Their face, their voice, they could always still be there. But the new journey that we're taking, that person cannot be that same role for us all the time. You know what I mean? And it's okay to know that that's okay, that you guys can still be friends, you guys can still talk. When you guys say we had beautiful memories together, but we're just not good together, and we have to break apart and just grow into different, better beings. And we can't grow more into ourselves as long as we're still like tying each other down, or as long as we're still these roles for each other. We can still be in each other's lives, but the roles that we play for each other has to change if we are to be happier within ourselves, maybe even happier with each other when we do see each other or hang out. All right, next note. Yeah, so when things do change or become bigger and you start getting cold feet and you're just like, do I really want to do this? Getting cold feet and saying, should I go back? That's normal. Um, just know that that's normal to feel doubtful, but don't fall for it. It's a normal response to feel. You still recording? Yep. It's a normal response to feel that way. And then Deb says she'll make Dexter proud. Sometimes when we do move forward, we need a motivation. Sometimes us isn't the best motivation. Sometimes we have a kid or someone that we love, and sometimes making the people around us proud or have them accept us or something is the only way we can move forward. Sometimes proving someone wrong because they said we couldn't do something, sometimes that's the motivation that we have to evolving. Um, and that's just how some people work. Sometimes that's just how it is. Yeah. So let's see. Next note. Oof. Okay. Yeah. So I kind of just smashed this one together. All right, so I'm going to skip that one for now. The next note is change requires adaptation. Yeah, when changes do happen, you have to learn to adapt. As I said before, adapt to the rules and things like that. Adapt to who you need to be, for the new change. I'm at the scene where brother Sam is boxing and he's checking out Dexter, and Dexter crashed his car on purpose just to see brother Sam, and he's like checking out his dark spirit. And he's like, "Oh, you want me to check your car out?" All right, so now going back to the next, back to the previous one, I mashed all these together. When change happens, it can be you can be surprised. It can be very surprising to you, but also when you do evolve or change or become better, there are going to be some people who may want to use you. There are going to be people who are going to want to use your position or use you or whatever. Don't always think of them as bad people because, I'm just saying that if my best friend, like, got hired at like Sonic, I'd be like, yo, hook me up with a milkshake. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, but I don't want to use that word use, but sometimes people are malicious and they'll say, oh, they got a new promotion, which means they got money, which means if I put myself into a rough situation, there's those that'll give me money. So some people, so you'll be surprised. Changes will be surprising. Sometimes people will use you. Um, sometimes it'd be bad. Some people will support you. You'll have people who support you. You have people who will use you. You have people who will be jealous of you. You will have people who you disappoint. You will have people who envy you. When you move on in your life, these things are just inevitable. You know, surprise, used, support, jealousy, disappointment, and envy. Sometimes these things are just, are what they are. All right. Oh, come on. On the next page, still on episode. So yeah, these first two episodes of Dexter had a lot to say. Just in every scene, they had a lot when it came to changes, and I'm actually very amazed at how well they did and in season six. Like, as bad as this season is, I'm sorry, there are very few things that I don't like that I will say is bad or sucks. I really don't like season six of Dexter. It's one of the few things in the world that I say will suck. But despite that, how much it sucks, a lot of these scenes and a lot of the writing and a lot of the just the messages and the timing that they had to articulate all of this, it's just amazing. And honestly, I think what really fell short season six was the lack of the Rita energy, the life energy. It was just very dead. It was just too dark. It was just lifeless. It was just very blah. And the villain was very much the same. But the message of season six, it was pretty good. The writing for season six was really good. But the writing can be amazing, but a story can still fall flat, despite how good writing is. But all right. Anyway, enough of that intermission. Episode three. All right. One skip. 1 second. I'm going to skip to episode three. Kind of give me a reference. Let me make sure I'm still recording. Yeah, an hour and 23. I've already. I could have watched a movie by now. It's crazy. All right, Smokey and the Bandit. Okay, so this episode. All right, when change is overbearing, we clean. Sorry, I have these. Anyway, when change is overbearing, we cling and project what we know. Yeah, yeah. When change gets to be too much. Those my neighbors are leaving at this time of night. Sorry, it's like almost 2:30 in the morning. Anyway, when changes are overbearing, we cling and project what we know. Yeah, that. So I believe this scene was when LaGuerta was like, "Oh, Deb's the new lieutenant." Um, this is how I would run things. This is how I would do it. This is how I would do it. And then we could constantly try to go back to what we know and what we're familiar with. And when we feel out of control or things are just too unfamiliar for us, we try to go back to what it is that is familiar to us. We go back to familiarity. And at the same time, we try to project onto other people what we think is familiar, what we think they should be, or if someone else is in our position that we were in, we try to project onto them how we would do things because it's so different that we just are like, this is what I would do, and then you purposely try to force it on them. A lot of times, parents will do that on their kid when they'll say, um, a lot of times they'll project their dreams or their goals onto their kid because they didn't or couldn't do it themselves, didn't do it themselves, and so they force it on their child or force their way of life onto their child. Um, or they see that their kid is so foreign or so different. They're just like, no. um, Deb is in her new position, and so she's trying to figure out how to dress. Um, so when you're trying to figure out how to present yourself, okay, sorry about that. My battery died. I'm glad I caught it in time. But yeah, when you're trying to present yourself, um, you may be wondering how to do that. How do you need to dress? How do you need to look? Um, you don't have to completely be like your older boss. It's not going to work out. You have to just find the middle ground. Some people will give you guidance and help you and give you pointers, as Mike did for Deb. Um, so it's good to take pointers every now and then, but it takes some adjusting, you know, just some adjusting, to figure out how should you, um, really present yourself when you're in a new position. But normally you will find a middle ground between who you are, who how you would dress in this position, but still be you and still, show the world, hey, this is me. I'm still me. I'm just in a new position. So this how I present myself is a combination of my position and me honoring my position and what it means and the perception of my position, but also me and the essence of what I have to offer this position. This position called me here. And so I will honor it, but at the same time, I will honor what it called me to be and what I have inside of me. Next note is what that came from. Yeah, Deborah choosing her wardrobe. Next note. Yes. Axes or tells Deborah, "Hey, you're working the field right now," and Deb was like, "Yeah, I should probably be at the station, in my office, um, looking at files." I can't even read what I wrote there. Oh, yes, high profile, because she's only doing high profile cases. So yeah, a lot of times when we're in a new position, we will have a desire or an automatic, like, autopilot system or whatever to go back into what we do, what our previous job was, and sometimes it'll take us a while to adapt to. I'm in this new position, and I need to know when I need to do certain things and when I need to let my team or my crew handle it. Because when I did all this, when I was in this position, I did all this, but now I'm in a higher position, which means everyone else has to do it. And it's like, I can't do it, or I'm not really supposed to, or am I supposed to do it? So just know, yeah, when you're in a new position, it takes some adjusting. as to relying on your team to handle what you used to handle, and things like that. So yeah, when you do stumble a little bit, just know it takes some getting used to. Next line. When in a position of power, follow your gut. You're in control. Yeah. So when you're in a position of power, just follow your gut because you're the leader now. So yeah, honor that. Honor your gift. Honor your North Star. I'm gonna have to use that line. Dexter's with the Tooth Fairy now, Mr. Kenny, and he's like, "Oh, good morning, Mr. Kenny." He's like, "Keep saying it, and maybe one day it'll be true." I'm gonna have to use that one day. Let me make sure I'm still recording. Yes, all right. I did season 2 of Dexter, and I lost like an hour, I think, of recording. And it's happened in movies before too, and TV shows. And I'm like, I've lost 40 minutes worth of. So yeah, I'm always checking my. Next line. When you're in a position of power, uh, you can. Okay, so I'm not sure what scene this is, but you cannot use fear to force people to change. Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, don't be trying to scare people into like changing into who you want them to become or who you want them to be. If they don't want to do it, if they can't be, if they're not called to do it, especially if they don't want to do it, if they don't choose to, then you cannot force it. You cannot force them to be who you want them to be. Next line. I feel like I need to say something else about that previous line. You cannot use. Yeah, you just if people don't want to change, and yeah, just don't make them. The next line is change of getting old and regret and legacy. When you get old and when you're changing and you get old, what is your legacy? What are you leaving behind in the world? But what are going to be some regrets? There are a lot of people that I wish that I talked to, a lot of women and crushes that I've had throughout the years, and they've been girls that I've actually had feelings for. And the world has told me, "Oh, you're just horny. That's all that is." It's like, really? Is that what it is? And it's not. As I got older, it's like, nah, like wasn't like that. I actually had legitimate feelings. You there are some people in this world I wanted to talk to. I wanted to say something to. There were certain women that I wish I could have expressed feelings to, and I've always been too scared to, never have. And as I'm getting older, I'm just like, wow, I wonder what would have happened if I actually pursued. I wonder what would have happened if I went for it. Maybe we wouldn't have been together now, but those feelings still would have been explored. Using myself as an example, of course, again. But as you start getting older, what are you going to leave behind as a legacy? Once you start changing, there are certain things you can't do anymore. It's like, well, what do I have left to leave behind? And life is going to change in that way. It's going to change, and you're going to have to face your regrets and your legacies and what you want to do with the rest of your life. Next line. You're going to stumble, but you've got options. Yeah, you're going to stumble, you're going to fail, you're going to have a hard time, but you've always got the options. Just know that you have the option to fail. You have the option to step back if things don't work out. Just don't fully feel pressured or scared to do something. Just have a nice little assurance that it's okay if things don't work out. It's okay if you fail. It's okay. You have options other than you have to get this perfect. You don't have to always get it perfect. You have other options. Just keep that in mind. Hello, brother Sam. Him and Dexter are talking at the scrap yard, the junkyard or whatever. Let's see. Next note is, oh yes, standing up for yourself loses the people trying to use you. This is when we get more into the mythology, the psychology of the Dexter character. So in this scene, Deborah is talking with Maria, with LaGuerta. And where LaGuerta is trying to work through Deb and control Deb, Deb had to stand up for herself and say, yo, I got this back up. Well, when you do that, when you stand up for yourself and you're like, yo, I got this back up, what's going to happen is those people are going to be like, you know what, whatever. And they're going to, hopefully, they just back off. They're going to back off, right? They're going to back off and leave you alone. And then at that point, you're like, okay, this person who tried to project their way through me, I made that barrier and I made it clear that I'm not having it. That now this is all me up in here. I'm the head. I'm the head honcho. Now once you come into that conclusion, then it's like, okay, now you stepped into the next layer of your power, of embodying your empowerment. You right as Deborah did that and she followed her gut and she chose Mike Anderson. Mike shows up right as Deb stands up to LaGuerta and LaGuerta goes away. Mike Anderson shows up and Mike Anderson comes with his own issues of, oh, what's this place around here? I'm tough, I'm big, I'm bad, I'm here in this new position, but I want people to know exactly who I am. Now that you have the new kid on the block, the change of having a new kid, new student, it's like, of course, they're gonna probably self-insert their personality and be like, "Yo, I'm here, deal with it." um, and it is important to keep those people in check and be like, "Yo, we're all here for the same reason, so cool it." But right as Deb stands up to herself from LaGuerta, Mike enters, and I believe Mike's character represents changes. I believe that was a symbolism of his character, and so that's why his character it's about change and adaptation. Every character in the Dexter series is a representation of Dexter's mind. So I believe Mike Anderson was about change and adaptation was his character. So yeah, as soon as Deb finds, gets from underneath LaGuardia's wing, now she's on her own to learn how to deal with changes, and that's when she resonates or manifests Mike Anderson as a character. That's why Mike Anderson is a character more connected to Deb, not Dexter, because it's more of you know um, a change in humanity, not a change in darkness. So Dexter's humanity is changing. Anyway, I don't want to get too confusing with that. Next line is, you got options standing up for yourself. Mike isn't used. Mike isn't used to changes. Oh yeah. So Deb has to assert herself. When you have that new kid on the block, when you have someone who's gonna stand up to you, even if you are the boss, you got to stand up for yourself. Quick little story I can give was in Saw, not Spiral, when I believe it was Darren Belzman, the director. He got Samuel Jackson to be in the movie, and and he was trying to direct Samuel Jackson. And he was like, "Yo, you should do this, you should do that." And Samuel Jackson was like, you know what? I think I'll do this. And you know what? Trust me, it'll work out. Or if I just sit here, if I just do this, if I say this line. And so I think someone told Darren Bowsman, like, hey, Sam Jackson is intimidating, especially on set, and he knows this. And the thing is, he wants to see how serious you are. If you are going to get his respect, then you're going to have to stand up to him and prove to him that this vision, that this project that you're doing means a lot to you. And if you want his respect, then you have to not be intimidated by him. And so when Darren Bowsman got that advice and went to Sam Jackson and told him what he needed to tell him, and it was like, yo, I'm the director, this is how it's going to go. And then Samuel Jackson was like, there you go, I respect that. I got, I'll listen. Whatever. So, um, yeah, so when Mike Anderson comes in and talks to Deb, it's important to really learn how to keep people in check and to really, hold your boundaries. And, when you are in a new position, there are going to be people who are going to want to test you, who are going to want to have an attitude with you. And it's important that you remind them, hey, I'm not your friend. Like, you need to respect my position first before anything. It doesn't matter, what the position is, the care, the friendship, whatever will be there. But the respect has to come first as the lead. So, yeah. The last note for episode 3. What matters and can be. What matters in life? What can you pass on? What gives your life meaning? And yeah, and I can't read the rest of it. But what matters in your life? What would you like to pass on? What gives your life meaning? And yeah, so that's it. Now jumping to episode 4. Change of surrender. Yeah, just don't resist change. Don't resist it. It's in our nature to resist it. Of course, we're going to do it at some point, but just be mindful that when a change does happen, just don't fight it too much. Just it may happen. It's probably going to happen anyway. You're just going to make it harder on yourself, probably everyone around you. But when change has to, or you're going to deny yourself a good evolution of life. But yeah, um, a next skipping to the next line. A new position requires new priority and new demands. Yeah, so when you are in a new position, your priorities need to change. Um, how you maintain those priorities, your foundations and your boundaries, contribute to that. And you're going to have new demands of, your roles and your leadership, and you're going to have different new demands. I believe that was when they were at the crime scene in episode 4. And everyone was looking at Deb like, what do we do? Mike also says, it's hot out here. And that scene, when Mike takes his jacket off and he's like, man, it's hot out here, that also contributes to when you're in a new position, you're, it demands, there's going to be new demands of you because Mike Anderson was from a different city, different state, and he comes to Miami, and he can't treat Miami like he treated his town in Chicago. The weather's different. There's a different demand for how you need to be, how you need to go about the day. So when everybody says, Deb, what do we do at the crime scene? That was a situation that represented um um when you're in a new position, it requires new priorities and new demands. And so when he takes his jacket off, that was also resonant of that um, I guess message that the writers had. The next, skipping to the next line, it's not easy realizing you're replaced in your position. Yeah, that's usually when you get a promotion or something like that, or you're a parent and then your child like gets a spouse or gets married or has a new boyfriend or whatever. And yeah, it's not. Sometimes you may feel it's not so much that you are replaced. It's just what your position was, as I said earlier before, what your position was at the time just needs to slightly be different for other people. And as they start to evolve and move on, you're still going to be there. You're still going to be their parent. You're still going to, really be their boss or be, whoever. But, sometimes they need other people to fill a role in their life that you were. But now that they've moved on, they need someone else who's able to take on that mantle. That's just how life works when changes come to be. Um, and I believe this was when Deborah and LaGuerta were talking. That might have been when they were doing their press conference or something like that. And I don't exactly remember, but I do remember that scene it was with LaGuerta in episode 4. Um, yeah, in this scene, Dexter stands up. Mike is trying to give the translations, and Quinn is constantly being like, "Man, man, 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 man." Dexter was like, "Yo, this killer, is trying to talk to us," and Mike's just helping with the translation. And I believe Quinn's character represents in Dexter expression, and I believe I wrote this down somewhere. And Mike represented change and everything. And Dexter's having a hard time with change because that's just not something that he likes. Dexter doesn't really like change, but it's something that he's kind of being forced to go through right now. So, with Mike Anderson representing change, of course, there's going to be some conflict in Dexter's head with the idea of change. So Dexter has to shut up his own brain and be like, okay, stop it. I know that, you want to really be resistant to this to change, but like he's trying to in order for us to understand this new situation, we have to accept change into the atmosphere, into the room. And Dexter telling Quinn basically shut up. This is what Mike's trying to do for us is Dexter trying to convince himself that he does have to listen to something beyond what he understands in order to understand what he needs to move on for the case. So so anyway, so yeah, that was Dexter really, really doing that. But also, it's because that's right. I wrote down. It's also because Mike was the new kid, the new guy, and Dexter knows what it's like to be the new guy, and for everyone to look at, oh, you're the loser, you're weird, you're different, and Dexter is not about that. Dexter knows what it's like to be picked on. I mean, Dexter knows what it's like for people to look at him as he's like the black sheep. So when people are treating Mike with such disrespect, Dexter's like, no, like I know what that's like. And so it's like, he stands up for Mike. Even though he stands up to Mike later on, but he still stands up for Mike because, he understands Mike's a good person and he likes him. He's the new guy. Dexter respects him. Anyway. Still recording. I hated that this might go to 2 hours, but it is what it is. Next line. Oh, time management. Okay, so yeah, when you go through time management, when you're going through new changes in life, you have to learn time management. you have to learn how to do this and this and this, and you got to figure out how to do all of it and have a schedule or a routine on how you do it. There was a scene in season 4 of Shameless when uh, one of the sons of the family, the older son, he was going to school and he had to learn how to manage his time in school and his studies and life and just all of that. So it's like, and then at some point he tells his boss while he's working, like, "Yo, can you let me off early so I can study for his test?" And it's like, "Nope, time management skills, figure it out. People go to school and work all the time, so it's going to be hard, it's going to be stressful, but time management skills are important, especially when it comes to change and getting into new positions in life." This was also an Easter egg, or kind of an Easter egg, in the same scene where Mike is talking to everybody in the room. They count the numbers. The numbers are 5 days apart. And Dexter said, "Oh, that's the difference between 1237 and 1242. I believe if those are the numbers. Was that they happen 5 days apart. And the numbers are five apart. Five is the number of change, which is also the number of the main theme of the show, which change. So that was just a nice little Easter egg. I just wanted to throw that in there real quick. Maybe it was a coincidence, but just saying that the number five, represented change, because there's always symbolisms in what Travis was doing as the Doomsday Killer. So, what did the number five really mean? They happen 5 days apart, but it also represents number change. The next one, letting people into your life sometimes invites the wrong people. This is when Masuka invites Ryan in, and Ryan is very mean, and not mean, but she's deceptive. So sometimes when you let new people into your life, sometimes you can let the wrong people in. Just got to be careful about what they're about. Be careful about how they treat you. Be careful about what they try to take advantage in you. Just be mindful of that. Yeah, just be careful. So Ryan, let me see. So in this scene, I wrote down these notes when Ryan sells the ice truck killer's hand, and what is his name? And Masuka realizes it. So in this scene, she okay, so here's some red flags. She acts different after she realized that Masuka liked her. She started acting different and she started being more flirtatious and playful and really really getting his guard down. Really getting his guard down. So that was kind of a red flag because she showed no interest before, but it wasn't until she found out he liked her, and she was like, "Okay, cool, and I guess I like you too now." That's kind of can be. She acts careless. She acts careless. Um, just kind of does whatever. Is always their mind is always gone. They're always just doing whatever. Now there's some people who mentally, check out, but having that careless act, having that not really worried about what's going on around them. If you're hanging out and their phone rings and they whip out their cell phone and they're just like blah 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 blah, and it's like, bro, we're on a date right now. Get off your phone. When they're careless and they don't pay attention to stuff like that. When they make also in this scene, um, when she got caught, she made excuses as to why she did what she did, and was trying to get Masuka to forgive her. And then after she makes her excuses, she says, "No one has to know." And now she's trying to clear her name and turn Masuka, you know, kind of test Masuka into who he is, test his morality. So when you have someone who does stuff like that, does something wrong to you, and they make excuses and then tries to say, "Oh, don't tell anybody," or you know, really try to keep things deceptive and secret within you. Red, they call red flags. All right. Next line, next note is Mike sees that Maria is happy that Deb says the F word. Yeah, when you get into new spaces, there's always going to be drama between other coworkers. There's always going to be drama between, other family members. If you're new to the family, there's going to be drama between, other siblings or whatever. You're just going to kind of get recruited into it. You're going to be like, wait a minute, is it just me or did I see it? And there's usually someone in the family or in the group that's like, oh no, it's not just you. Yeah, you saw it right. But yeah, that's a thing when it comes to change and adapting to new situations. Um, and yeah, Maria is wanting to set up Deb for failure, so she was like, just be yourself, and hopefully hoping that Deb will lean into her inexperience and do something that'll get her in trouble because Maria's jealous and still trying to knock her down. When you're in a position of power, things like that will happen. People who you think are your friends will do stuff to you, like they do things like that to you. Or if you're a student president, you there is an Easter egg here when Travis is with this woman and they are having a sexual encounter. There's actually an alteration in the music that's played in the background. A little bit off topic, but this song is called Baptized by Sam. But in this version, as Travis is with this girl, you hear pieces of Baptized by Sam, but you hear like the choir kind of fade out, saying that this isn't really holy. This is darker. This is a dark ritual that's happening right now. And as the dark ritual is happening, the music starts to change into a more darker, more sinister type vibe or feel to it. Then you see Geller peeking. That is what that scene symbolized is just like with Ryan and Masuka, when you do have sex with somebody, you have to be careful about who you have sex with because you can invite their energies into your energy field. What they go through, what's in their heart, the dark stuff in their heart, can sometimes end up infecting you. And that scene when Travis was with that woman represented uh, Travis's darkness, opening up a portal, basically a sexual portal, and having his darkness being shared inside with this woman. And you know what happens after that. That's what that was. So that was kind of a reverse baptism or a baptism into holiness, with Nick versus a baptism into dark darkness with a woman and Travis's character. Yeah, so the music blended that together perfectly. Now, jumping to episode 5 notes. Travis is praying with Geller, and and as they're praying, God gives Travis a hint of the truth, and and he sees the side of Geller's face bleeding. That is two things. That is God trying to show Travis the truth and giving him a hint, but also not just God showing Travis the truth, but also Travis, Travis's demon, his dark side, his dark passenger, which is Geller, is um, blocking Travis from fully embodying or fully finding God. And of course, that's the struggle with Travis and Geller is that Travis is having a hard time with his good side and with his dark side, which is Geller, and so the two sides are split. And at some point, Travis accepts the dark side, and they become one being. And so, yeah, that's also the part that Dexter kills is that part of him and his darkness being one being instead of being a passenger. But yeah, that's what that is. That's that. Episode 3 ended kind of sad. Anyway, episode 5. Next note. In new environments, things can seem odd, but there is always a mutual familiarity. Doesn't matter how different things are, there's always going to be something familiar, something that you do recognize, no matter what it is. Even if you're working with a brand new team, there's always going to be some mutual goal that you all will share together. And yeah, no matter how different the environment is. The next for episode 5, move on, let the past go, embrace change, and get therapy. Um, when you need to move on, when life, gets to that point, sometimes you just have to move on. You just have to let go of the past. You just have to put that rejected wedding ring in the desk and close that drawer. And sometimes you just have to embrace that this is your new path. This is your new future. This is your new investment. And sometimes you need to get therapy to help release the things of the past that are stopping you from healthfully evolving into this new position or evolving into this position in a healthy way. Um, next line is episode 6, which is when they were getting baptized. Or no, when they were at Nick's baptism spot, and Dexter confronted Nick after shooting our boy, Brother Sam. Nick said his life didn't change. His life was bad before and after. When Nick said he got baptized and his life didn't change, when he felt like life didn't change, he reverted back to who he was before. Sometimes we'll go through these situations where we will go through life and we will say, I want to do this thing and it may benefit me and it may be better for me. Then you may do it for a while and then at some point you just shut back down. You're just like, you know what? I'm gonna go right back to my old ways, how I was before. A lot of times when we have change in our life, we have expectation and we have like this burst of energy. What happens is when that energy dulls down, then we no longer resonate with the motivation of why we want to change. And the reason why we don't have the motivation is because the excitement isn't there. So a lot of times what people will do is they will make changes in their life depending on when they are at the highest in their life or they're feeling at their highest. But what happens with that is you will only be motivated to change in life when you're at your highest state of mind when you do that. So what some can do is when they have a motivation to want to do something different or they have a motivation to want to change, they will actually take the motivation of change and they will actually put it in the lower energy centers of who they are. So therefore, so when that happens, you'll notice when some people get sad or some people will get depressed, they'll snap, something in their brain will snap and they will be like, I need to clean up or I need to do this chore or I need to do this activity. And they will just continuously, they will just obsessively do it. And it's because they've actually programmed that motivation of change into a lower energy center of who they are. So therefore, when they're at a lower energy center and they feel in a lower energy center, whatever that motivation of change was only activates when they're at the lowest part of how they feel. So a lot of people will get motivation to want to do something amazing and big only when they're at their highest. But the problem with that is when you're at your highest is when you feel the most motivated to do things and get things done. But then when you're not feeling at your highest energy, you no longer resonate with the change that you wanted for yourself. And then it starts to fade away. And then you feel like you're disconnected from it and you feel like it's not real. So sometimes we have expectations of what we think changes should be for us or should be for our life. And sometimes we just don't always go about it the same. Sometimes it's just something we feel like we want to do in the moment. Sometimes we're just like, oh, I feel good about it. And it's like, okay, so you feel good and that's what's keeping you there. Okay. And then once you stop feeling good, sometimes you can program yourself to automatically jumpstart back to that motivation once you stop feeling good. It's like a neurological, automated auto system, you know. But yeah, another reference. This was actually the main motivation for Saw 3, which was this guy who actually got diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, and he was like, "Oh man," he looked at life differently. He smelled life differently. He treated people differently for like a week or something like that. And after the week was over, his doctor called him and was like, "Oh, I got your test results mixed up with somebody else." This patient realized, oh, he wasn't going to die, but then like his life was so changed and altered when he thought he was going to die, and that he looked at life differently and he treated life differently, and he realized what was important to him and what wasn't important. So he went on through life, but then after like a few months, he said he went right back to being that petty old him that he used to be before the misdiagnosis. And yeah, sometimes in change, if our motivation isn't right, sometimes we revert back to who we were before, and sometimes that doesn't mean that we've changed. Sometimes it's just we've adopted a new temporary identity. All right. Next line. Change means finding your independence and power. So yeah, bliss was when Deb was laying out her pictures of the crime scene all over the floor, and Harrison found them, and she got in a fight with Jamie, and everything. At least I believe that was that scene, yeah. And so um Deb needed to find her own space, so she found a house and she got inside the house, and yeah, when you are when life changes for you, it's important that you find your own independence and your own power so you can have a healthy growth into this new change in your life. You don't want people to try and sabotage your change in life and try to hold you back. Also, when Brother Sam got shot, Dexter was going through a change, and it was out of his control, and so he relied on something beyond what he knew or beyond what he understood, to help get him through it. Help him feel safe or comfortable with it. He always relied on Harry, but then at some point, he was like, Brother Sam was like, "Oh, rely on God, have faith." Um, and the last note, Sally and Becca in Nebraska, in the Nebraska vacation. Um, Sometimes when change gets too intense, we get to a point where we need to actually stop and analyze who we are and figure out who we actually want to be and what choice are we going to make, to what path are we going to choose. And sometimes we can be going in one direction and life will throw us in the complete opposite direction. And sometimes we need to go in that opposite direction because we need to understand what it is we truly want, what we truly want to be. Um, and so, yeah. with Becca and Sally, in an abusive situation, when an abuser leaves or an abuser is forced out, if you yourself are not emotionally ready to move on, you're going to constantly attract bad abusive relationships to you. You're going to constantly jump into bad abusive relationships. You're going to constantly be worried, oh, this person's going to come and get us. This person's going to come and kill us. And you're going to be worried and scared. And as soon as that person shows up, you're probably going to just be like, oh, maybe it's okay for now. And then forgive them. And then you're right back to square one and everything seems fine. And you're right back at the trap. Um, and as for Becca, sometimes when you can't deal with change, you will drive people crazy, people around you crazy, and sometimes they can't cope with it. They can't cope with you not coping, and they can end up hurting themselves, doing something bad to themselves. Especially when you're their mentor or their parent, and when you can't handle change, then you create this emotional cancer within your household, and it can end up here hurting your kids, hurting people that you love. Um, so just be aware of that when it comes to change and abuse, and change and dealing with someone who is abused but is still obsessed with their abuser. Just be aware of how if you know, of when to get out, when to move on. Leaving is sometimes good because you may not be alive if you stay. Don't stay and become a monster, and don't stay and kill yourself. Don't stay and just kill yourself physically, emotionally. Don't stay until there's nothing left of you. Sometimes just leaving is better than just trying to sit there and take it until you can't anymore. I'm tired, and thank you for listening to this. Season 6 about change, and I am going to bed. Thank you for listening, and have a good night.